Welcome. Here is our week number 3 introduction. We have a few things on our agenda this week. The first thing that I ask you to do is to look at the discussion forum rubric that I have attached below. I have been very impressed with all of the thinking and the discussions that have been going on over the past few weeks. I haven't been grading any of the forums because I hadn't provided you with a rubric as of yet. So I want to start grading some of these forums because they are top-notch. I think that the ideas and the questions that are being posed and the clarifications and the critical thinking that is going on has really enhanced this class, and I couldn't have asked for anything better than what I've seen being provided by all of you out there. So I'd like to start incorporating that into our overall grade. So make sure to take a look at the discussion forum rubric, as I will be using it on all forum types that we'll be participating in from this point forward. The second thing on our agenda is for you to read the article called Behind Test Scores, What Struggling Readers Really Need. And what this article is about is it talks of a district that administered several different types of assessments and then used that data to form what they called clusters of students according to the data that they had found. So this is kind of digging into different ideas that districts had and how they use the data and the information found from the assessments to help meet the needs of their students in their districts. You'll be completing a journal assignment write-up on that article, Behind Test Scores. And the journal write-up is very similar to the class reflection, where in the first part you will summarize the key findings, the key points, the main ideas of the article. And the second part is about the implications of the article to you and your profession. Some of the things that I would really like you to focus on in that second part, where you're talking about implications and you're kind of doing some reflections, is thinking about those different clusters that they talked about, and just talking about if you've experienced those and what were your findings when you had to deal with those similar situations. What were some things that you did? Did you try any of the ideas that they had discussed within the findings of this article? I also would like you to think about what would be the reading coach and the reading specialists. What would they be bringing to the table when it comes to this information? How do you see their role playing out from what was found within this article? That journal assignment write-up is due Sunday, May 31st at midnight. So you have a while to get that going. The third thing, it will be kind of an ongoing project that you'll be working on. What I want us to do is to start looking at what assessments does your district use? What are some district-wide assessments that are used at every single grade level to help track students' progress, to identify students that need to be challenged, and identify students that needed some extra support? So if someone in this class belongs to the same district as you can work together in compiling this list. But I would like you to try to find 8 to 10 different assessments that are used pre-K to 12th grade. We will be starting to look at those on the face-to-face days, so your list needs to be completed by June 15th. And we'll be sharing it, talking about the different things, looking at what are some similarities, and if there are gaps in your district list, maybe you can hear some ideas that other districts are using and kind of swap back and forth to help to strengthen the data that you're collecting at your districts. So for example, in West Salem, in pre-K to second grade, they do a lot of focusing in on those early literacy skills, the things that you know from Marie Clay and what you learned from your emergent literacy class. So they have a whole standard C checklist where they're looking at letter-sound correspondence, they're looking at spelling, they're doing some spelling assessments, writing assessments, phonemic awareness, and looking at comprehension as well. Then in grades 3 to 8, We administer the MAPS assessment 3 times a year and the Ames Web probes 3 times a year. And what we do at the middle school with that information is we use that to identify our gifted and talented and identify the students that need to be put in our RTI Panther Time groups, interventions, and also to help us to identify those students that you would call gray area kids, students that we need to make sure that we're keeping an eye on so that they don't slip and fall below our grade level benchmarks. I know that at our high school, in 9th and 10th grade, they take something called Aspire, which is like an ACT type of assessment. It lets them know who's ready to take the ACT, in essence, is what the Aspire does. And then as juniors, they take the ACT, and that is the high school's assessments that are used. At the middle school, when we have identified a student as needing some intervention and joining our RTI groups, we then use some informal reading inventories, like Read Naturally placement levels, which looks at their fluency and also their comprehension. We also use the NAMES test and the San Diego Quick Assessment, and both of those we use to assess word identification and any possible early literacy skills deficits. The NAMES test, if you're not familiar with it, has a lot of chunks and rhymes within it, and it helps you identify whether those students are able to decode simple vowel pairings and blends and graphemes and all of those things that you learned in emergent literacy. If we do find with the NAMES test and the San Diego Quick Assessment that we do have someone that needs some early literacy work, then we end up placing them into a Tier 3 RTI intervention with a more one-on-one specific type of intervention to help to bring them up to where they need to be, and then they can come back into the regular intervention. So once you've come up with the list, what I'd like you to do is to copy the Google Doc form labeled District Assessment List. Please make sure that you make a copy of it. If you start to just fill it in as is, then it's going to go on the master list that everyone else would be looking at. So make sure that you have copied the Google Doc form. And I'm going to move us on to that form. So here is what your assessment list will look like. So on the left-hand column, you'll just write down the name of the assessment, and then you'll just put an X next to what categories they address and they are assessing. What I also would like you to do is, after you've made this list, is to think of 3 to 5 assessments that you absolutely love or you think are really good at identifying students and what they need. What I'd like you to do is to bring those to our face-to-face days. You don't need to actually bring the assessment, but bring the names and just a brief description, how it's administered, what kinds of things the students have to do, and what it exactly evaluates. If your district happens to use a data sheet or some kind of checklist in order to keep track of the students that they're assessing, please bring along a copy of that with you to our face-to-face meetings as well. So remember, this is an ongoing project that is not due until our face-to-face days on June 15th. And if you would like to pair up with someone from the same district in our class, feel free to do so. The last thing that you'll be participating in is some discussion forums. We're going to start reading our texts. So you'll be reading the first 2 chapters in the QRI text and the first 2 chapters in Intervention Strategies to Follow Informal Reading Inventory Assessments. And what you'll do is you'll participate in a forum for each of those different texts. As you're reading those texts, what I'd like you to do is think about what are some of the ideas, what are some passages, some quotes, some phrases that really stuck with you, that you had a real significant feeling about. And what I'm encouraging you to do is, as you're reading, to highlight those, mark the pages, write it on a Post-it, write it on a note card, because you'll be participating in a strategy called save the last word for me in your forum posts. And I'll explain that on the next slide. So save the last word for me is a strategy that helps to strengthen, clarify, and deepen the meaning of the article or the text that we've read. And what will happen is, as you choose that phrase, passage, quote, whatever it was from the text, you don't comment on it at all. And then other learners will then read it, and then they'll comment, and you'll build upon each other's thinking and create a dialogue about what is read. So the first thing you'll do is, as you're reading, like I said, you'll choose a passage, phrase, or quote from the text that held some kind of significant meaning to you. Could be something that you questioned, something that you felt a really deep connection to, something you agreed or disagreed about, an idea that was surprising or exciting to you. And your initial post for each of the forums will be only that passage, quote, or phrase copied exactly word for word and the page number that you found it on. That is all you will do for your initial post, which needs to be done by Thursday, May 28th. And what will happen is that other classmates will then respond and comment on the passage that you shared, expressing what they were thinking about that passage or quote or phrase. You will be doing the same thing to other people's posts throughout the whole process. After you've done your initial post, then you will need to do, like we've done in the past, comment and reply to at least 2 other people's posts in each of the forums over a course of 2 different days. Then on Sunday, May 31st, you'll revisit your original post, read all the comments and responses made by everyone else, and then you'll reveal your final thoughts. Hence the title, Save the Last Word for Me. You end up telling us what your original thinking was, why was it that you originally chose that, and then also within that final post, synthesize the ideas of your classmates, the things that they said, and how those impacted or changed or validated the thinking that you had already had in regards to the passage, phrase, or quote that you shared. So it'll be interesting to see what kinds of things that you choose from the 2 different texts for Save the Last Word for Me. There might be way more than just one thing that you want to share, but 1 is the minimum for each of the texts. So 1 post, Save the Last Word for Me on the QRI, and then another one on the intervention strategies to follow IRIs. All right. Have fun, and I look forward to seeing what is going to happen this week. Enjoy your week.